Welcome to the Bioptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. And now here's your host, Wade T. Lightheart.
And now for a Bioptimizers fixed digestion tip, rapid cheat meal relief. Research shows that cheat meals can actually be an effective way to boost your metabolism. One key weight loss hormone, leptin, can be increased by up to 30% following a cheat meal. The challenge with the cheat meals is that all those extra calories and lower food quality can be hard to digest, which means you could be totally sidelined with a food coma after big cheat meals. The solution is to take strong digestive enzymes like masszymes, which will help rapidly digest and break down the extra food. 3 to 5 capsules before or right after your cheat meal can make a huge difference in how you feel following the cheat meal. If it's a cheat day with multiple large meals, you might want to go up to 10 capsules or higher to help you power through all that food. To save 10% on masszymes, go to masszymes.com. That's MASSZYMES.com and enter the code CHEAT10 at checkout.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It's Wade T. Lightheart from Bioptimizers with another edition of the Awesome Health Podcast. And today we're going to talk about a topic that is close to everyone's heart, and that is cancer. For example, we're going to talk about how people can find out why they had cancer. Also, what kind of diet should people be on if they have cancer? And what are the most common drivers of cancer? Another thing you might be thinking about how this contributes to the problem is, how do you know if you have a blood sugar problem? What health issues might be blocking your body from healing? And today's guest is Katrina Foe. She is a board certified in holistic nutrition, restorative wellness solutions, master practitioner, and certified in the metabolic approach to cancer. Katrina and her team work with clients all over the world with the goal of helping them uncover why they had cancer and how to prevent recurrence. Katrina, welcome to the show.
Thanks. It's great to be here, Wade.
This is a huge topic. I worked with the American Anti-Cancer Institute for many years. And one of the things that I would always say, people would come to me in the Holistic Wellness Center with, every sort of diagnosis you could imagine around cancer. And there's a lot of emotion, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of uncertainty, there's big jargony words, and it can be very challenging for people in that situation. The second thing, one of the things I always say is, well, you got 3 options when you get a diagnosis. 1, do nothing. 2, follow the conventional medicine with whatever's unfolding in that, whether you get just one opinion or multiple opinions, but you go down that road. 2 or 3, you take a holistic approach, either avoiding that system or integrating holistic ideas around that process. So it's kind of like 3 fours almost. And I said, but regardless of the situation that you whichever one that you so choose, you have to recognize that you got cancer for a combination of genetics and lifestyle. And even if you recover, you still have to address those conditions that triggered the cancer response. I would like to know, before we get into that, how did you get into this conversation, into the whole cancer situation, and started working with this topic because it literally touches so many people's lives?
It does. And that's exactly how I got into it, is that it touched my life. I had cancer myself, breast cancer, and chose to go the 3rd route. Nothing against people that want to go route 1 or 2, but for me, based on what I had already experienced with seeing food as medicine, as a healing, amazing healing opportunity, I really felt led to go ahead and address everything 100% naturally. And the entire experience kind of blew my mind and really piqued my curiosity. I was already in kind of the wellness world as a Pilates instructor, and I taught anatomy. And this was not the area that I focused on with the body. And so I wanted to understand more and go into understanding why I had cancer and dig into it. And then I just couldn't not start helping people, because as I learned more, I had to share more, and it just couldn't stop.
That quite often happens. Hippocrates, and I quote him often, said that the best doctors or medicine or medical practitioners are those who do not exude robust health, who are challenged. So they develop both the empathy as well as the directional intensity, I'm paraphrasing here, in order to discover how one overcomes extremely challenging positions or challenging situations. So in your research on more of the holistic side, what were some of the things that you did or that you advocate when someone gets a diagnosis with cancer? So you can start with yourself and maybe share some of the things that you've learned in that process, maybe some tendencies that are great and some things that aren't so great, because very few people knock it out of the park in their first try.
I love that. Yes. So there's a lot there. So for me, because we had already been working on our health and refining things, I was really shocked. When I found the lump, I did not think that this was going to be cancerous. And then when it came back, it really shook me, because I felt like I was doing all the right things. We were eating clean. I was making everything organic, homemade from scratch. I was making our toiletries and cleaning products. Like, we had moved to the country to be away from pollution. And so we could raise our own animals for clean meat, like kind of extreme, like really we were doing all the stuff. And so it really shocked me. And I felt like, okay, I need to put everything I think I know on the table and reevaluate, because there is something that I am not doing right, that I'm missing, and I need to, start from scratch. And I found that, a lot of the popular ideas for cancer treatment in the natural world, a lot of them have a lot of, bad science, not having good research or clinical evidence. But overall, the entire world, there's not really great research going on with alternative healthcare, which is really frustrating. And people, the clinicians, as a whole, are doing a great job, but they're not using the test that we have at our disposal to really dive in and see what is specifically for this person. It's a lot of one size fits all protocols, similar to the standard of care. Some people get one chemo versus another, but they're not using, even in standard of care, a lot of the actual diagnostic tests that we have to see what's going on. So for me, I started at one extreme and I started a raw vegan diet. I went down to a Gerson clinic in Mexico, and I actually got kicked out because I'm a naturally curious person. I was really trying to understand what was going on. And my questions were things they didn't have answers for, and they didn't like it. And they not so politely asked me to leave, which was, I was free falling at that point. I didn't know what to do. And people were not wanting to give me answers when I asked kind of the tough questions, I guess. One thing led to another. And that's when I discovered functional medicine and found a practitioner that would run the test. And I had never run any tests, nothing. This was completely eye-opening to me. And I was a little baffled by all the stuff that showed up as being, we'll just say, messed up on me and very out of balance. So if I had looked at these tests beforehand, I could have seen this coming. And it kind of frustrates me in that way in terms of prevention. This was clear as day on the test. And then from there, I used those tests to work on and address my own issues. And there's newer, more updated tests now, but it's similar in terms of what I use now as a practitioner to help clients.
So I want to back that truck up for a second, because you get a lump and then go to your doctor, they run a barrage of the conventional medicine tests and say, okay, you got cancer. They say, what? You got chemotherapy, radiation, or surgery, right? They kind of give you the options. What were the options that they presented you on that? And what was the prognosis? Or did you just avoid it completely?
I avoided it completely. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So you did you get a diagnosis of cancer from a medical practitioner?
Not technically. And this is the interesting part. So for me, like, you can't really tell on this recording, but I am not a very well endowed woman. I found this and it was a golf ball. Like, this was not something that was
Right.
avoidable. I did a couple different tests that are not in the market in the US. They are in Europe, that are diagnostic. You can tell not only do you have cancer, but where it originates from. Which again begs some questions that I'll just leave out there. Also, I had a large lump in my armpit that I started draining with some herbs and such. So probably, it wasn't stage 1. There was something going on with the lymph nodes and such, but I did not get an official diagnosis staging.
Got it.
And honestly, from what I know now, I'm really grateful that I didn't, because although it would be kind of nice as a practitioner to have like that concrete, I've had people accuse me of, well, you didn't actually know that you had cancer.
Right.
And that's fine, but I don't want to actually submit myself to that, because what we know now is that, with the biopsies, with the mammograms and such that they use for diagnosis, it actually, those techniques can cause cancer potentially and spread things. So, not messing with it and letting the body do its own work of healing was the route that I chose to take. And it's not the route everyone would take. Some people need that concrete diagnosis. Sure. And I am totally fine with that. There's a lot of psychological things that go on behind there as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Maxwell Maltz described it in his book, Psycho-Cybernetics, about showing how he literally witnessed voodoo practitioners pointing the bone at someone and issuing what was determined a curse, and the person just dying because of their belief inside that system. And there's all sorts of research studies about doctors giving proclamations of life expectancy or termination components. In virtually every case that people overcome that, they have some sort of defense mechanism for that prognosis. So it's like, they have to put up an armor. And we're conditioned to put doctors in a certain authoritative position. And there's some good parts to that, and there's some really downside. And cancer is one of those issues, because it's not a timeline. Like, there's so many generalities on it. And then within the medical profession itself, the time and energy that a practitioner has to actually spend with you, as well as the tools they have in their toolbox, are somewhat limited, no matter how smart and motivated that person is. So really, you have people that are living in smart people in a very regulated, limited box, that they can only implement certain things without getting a lot of retribution from federal, provincial, and board agencies from which they are part and parcel to. Yeah. And people in the know understand that. Now, a lot of people in the natural health world, and you said two things I think was really important. You also brought up the fact that there was a lot of, rainbows and unicorn talk inside the alternative health. And oftentimes medical practitioners, that's what they attack. And then the health advocates on the other side are attacking sort of the industrial compromise of the pharmaceutical industrial complex that doctors find themselves in. I think there's evidence to support both sides of the argument, and that's why it's such an individual thing. So after that, so you talked about some things that you started to do for yourself, draining those. Like, how did you go about doing it? What were the things that you were doing, and did you discover when you got kicked out of the Gerson clinic, I guess it was? Said, I got to figure out how to eat and how to treat these things and to do something on my own.
Yeah. And getting kicked out, there's a psychological trauma, but it was also okay, what do I eat now? And over the years, the research that I've done, I've realized not only was a raw vegan diet like the worst idea ever for me, but in general, it's not a great choice for cancer. Because it is going to be basically giving you sugar bombs of juice, every few hours. So the blood sugar dysregulation that is going on there, because you're taking all the good fibers out that not only feed the good bacteria, but also help slow down the blood sugar spike. It's not a great fit because we know that cancer is a metabolic disease. And this is something that Otto Warburg won the Nobel Prize for like in 1931, I think. And yet we're ignoring that. The oncologists are even, they're in the chemotherapy labs giving people all these sweets and cookies and such and wanting them to just eat lots of carbs, whatever they want. This is the worst idea ever. And what I found diet-wise through my research was that the ketogenic diet not only is incredibly effective for cancer, but it also was incredibly effective for me personally because I also have bipolar and have had that since my teenage years. And that put my bipolar 100% in remission with diet alone.
Interesting.
Nobody's talking about that either. And this is a great big area where it's pharmaceuticals are the only choice. So like to bring it full circle for me, getting cancer was the answer to my prayers because it led me to the ketogenic diet that then reversed the bipolar.
It's a great point. In Dr. David Hawkins, who wrote a book called Orthomolecular Psychiatry with Nobel Prize winner Linus Pauling and Abram Hoffer, another world-renowned naturopathic medicine advocate. They were treating all kinds of diseases with high dosages of nutrients. Of course, the vitamin C protocols developed by Linus Pauling became relatively famous, a two-time Nobel Prize winner. I think Otto Warburg's a two-time Nobel Prize winner as well. He's a pretty remarkable individual. So good you brought him out. But what was fascinating in Dr. Hawkins' work in psychiatry is he said that he would have his psychiatric patients. These are not just having like, hey, I'm feeling a little sad or down or upset with this trauma. People who were in uncontrollable states in a mental institution because they were a danger to themselves and society. And he would have them cut out sugar, and their incidence of psychiatric, like hearing voices and all the sorts of things that would go on in those extreme cases would reduce by 50%. Just by managing blood sugar. So I think managing blood sugar, however you go about doing it, is an unrealized adjunct to any kind of disease state or any kind of diagnosis. I think there's a variance with how well people handle blood sugar variants, and different diets work for different people. We wrote a book on that. My business partner is a ketogenic advocate, has been for 30 years. And there is some strong research around reducing sugar. And the idea, if I understood, and mark me wrong if I've come to an erroneous conclusion, is that certainly in the early stages of cancer, the anaerobic phase, there is a phase where cancer can become aerobic, and that when that happens, it is a serious problem. But it essentially lives in an anaerobic environment, low oxygen, is fed by sugars, and that produces metabolic byproducts that are suboptimal for the cellular environment. Would that be a kind of a simple layman's term of how things is, and then how that might, maybe if that's true, you can explain how the ketogenic diet changes that model?
Yeah, exactly. So when you have cancer cells, like you said, Otto Warburg, with his Nobel Prize, was showing that when a cell goes from the aerobic to anaerobic, so it's not using oxygen, the need it has for blood sugar just goes through the roof. And so with that need, if you have high blood sugar where, it's out of that 70 to 90 range that's optimal that the body wants to keep it in, if it's constantly going up to, 150 and stuff, which is super common in our society nowadays, you're just like pouring the fuel into the cancer cell. And you can see that because, what do we use to detect cancer? We give clients radioactive sugar, and then we watch on a PET scan where it's being uptaken like crazy. And that's the cancer. I mean, this is known in the oncology world, and they use this, but yet they don't say, hey, maybe we shouldn't eat sugar.
But that's a really simple explanation that warrants people listening to. They take radioactive sugar to track what's feeding the cancer cell. And a cancer cell is essentially a cell that is dividing and growing in excess to what its normal cellular life. That's basically unregulated growth. And that starts sucking up resources that drain the body's energy from all sorts of both local and then eventually systemic energies, metabolic energy sources. Would that be
exactly? Yes. Yeah. So, if you don't give it so much fuel, it's going to help slow the growth rate down. Plus, as the tumor needs more and more sugar, it's going to start a process called angiogenesis, which is a fancy term for it actually signals the body to help create new blood vessels. So there's more blood coming. So there's more blood sugar coming. So this is how smart the tumor is. We don't want it to grow. So let's not keep feeding it and work on not only the metabolic issues with the blood sugar, but some, make sure that we try to slow down the angiogenesis. And you can do this with making sure you're not eating any copper and watching certain levels like VEGF. Now, when you go into something like ketosis, so a ketogenic diet, not only are you working on the blood sugar, which is all well and good, but you're also going to be throwing actual ketones. And that has like nice therapeutic properties for healing, similar to something like autophagy, which is the body's repair system. And those are really, really very helpful in terms of taking the body out of this like tumor growth factor and calming things down. Now, all this to say, this is not going to be the only thing that you want to be focused on, because yes, this is the foundation, this is the diet, but usually there's 10 areas that research has shown, areas that things will promote cancer, and this is one. Now, when somebody has cancer, there's usually 6 to 8 of these going sideways that you want to address all of them. And this is where I see a lot of the issues when people want to go alternative or even, integrative, that they're not looking for everything. They're just going to fixate on one thing.
Right.
Now, the other thing with blood
I just want to stop you on that for a second, because this is the question that just drives me bananas on everything. And that is, you get in a conversation. It could be about weight loss. It could be about recovering from a disease. It could be about building muscle. It's about your tax strategy, your banking strategy, your business strategy, whatever. People today are going, what's the one thing I need to do? And it's like, it doesn't work like that. There are there's no single contributor to cancer, and there's no singular cure to cancer. There's a multitude of factors that ultimately you got to stack the balance in your favor and not in the favor of the cancer. That goes the same for weight loss. That goes the same for being healthier, developing a business, like whatever. You've got to stack the favor. First, you got to identify what the things are that you need to do, or not doing, or inadvertently contributing to the other side of the equation. And then you've got to change the behavior of the individual. So really what you're talking about is behavior modification around some key factors. I'm curious as to what those key factors are, and I'm sure our listeners are as well.
Yeah. So the 10 root cause drivers, there's buckets, and within each one of them, there's quite a few different things that can go wrong. So it's not quite as simplistic as 10 things, of course. The first one, like we mentioned, is the metabolic issues. So the blood sugar connections there. Hormones is one. So we're talking sex hormones being, a lot of times women are estrogen dominant and such, as well as thyroid hormones. Hypothyroid has been shown in the research to be linked with cancer development, as well as lots of other chronic diseases. The microbiome. So yes, the gut bacteria, but also digestive capacity. Those are going to be really important to look at. Are there parasites? Is there H. pylori? Are you digesting your food properly? And I know you're especially passionate about that, but if you're not digesting stuff, the whole body doesn't have the building blocks that it needs to do everything.
Also, people, just as an adjunct to that, what tends to happen when your digestion is compromised, you'll tend to go to fast digesting sugars as a source of energy. which are going to be exactly what a cancer cell would want. I want more sugar and I want less of these other things, because it starts to override your mechanisms of health producing activity. Sorry to interrupt there, but I think that was really important.
No, that's a really great connection, because all of these, I'm putting them in separate buckets, and this is oversimplifying it, but they all cross over and affect each other, just
That's
like
right.
you're talking about.
Yeah.
Angiogenesis is one. And so that's that development of new blood vessels, like I mentioned before. Stress. This is a huge one. So this has to do with the circadian rhythm, your adrenal hormones. And this can be stress inside the body as well as, from external, like a loss of a job or spouse or something like that.
I think that's one of the things I think is important to identify is usually if you track most diseases, there is an external or internal stress that comes up that triggers these that kind of the full-blown effect. So maybe you've been kind of slowly losing that battle over time, but not being readily aware of it. But then an external or internal event happens that creates a really stressful response. And then that's where the overwhelm of your natural capabilities happen. And that's why typically people start getting more illness as they get older than as they get younger, because their capacity to manage all the things trying to take you out continue to diminishes over time. So the emergence of what was easy to handle in your 20s, such as like pneumonia, maybe you can survive that easier 20s. Well, that for someone in their 70s or 80s can be a death sentence. Yeah. And people die from pneumonia all the time. It's one of the leading causes of death in the elderly, but very few young people die of pneumonia. Because they have the resources to handle it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is a big one. So also another bucket is immune system. So this is the system that should be, the way it's designed, going through the body and regularly looking and attacking rogue cancer cells. And when this area is overwhelmed by all the other buckets not doing their thing right, this gets derailed. And this is where, everything kind of starts, so to speak. So looking at, vitamin D levels, looking at the autoimmune conditions, all this would be included. Inflammation is another area. And with cancer, with chronic disease in general, you're going to have a lot of inflammation. And so looking at not only what is causing the inflammation, but all the beautiful things that we have to calm inflammation down are incredibly important. And the inflammation markers, there's 3 of them that I use to monitor ongoing every single month with people that are actively cancering, so that I can see before there's another scan if things are going sideways, if more progression's happening in a very simplistic kind of way. Cheap and easy, right? Epigenetics. So you mentioned genetics before, and genetics, most people, that's what they think. It's just Russian roulette. What do my genes have? But it's less than 10% of the genetics. 10% of cancers are actually genetically driven, meaning the inherited genes, you're going to get this. And this is really important for people to know. But the epigenetics, this is what we've found recently, that the actual lifestyle and diet factors can turn on and off the gene expression. So we have the power. And if you know what your genes are doing, what variants you have, things like MTHFR, COMT, CYPs and such, we can do specific strategies personal to us to really, determine which way our body is more influenced, which is incredibly powerful.
Yep.
Another huge area is the environmental toxins. And this is the one I end up getting stuck talking about a lot, because people are just completely, they know there's toxins, but the amount of toxins that we're being exposed to and the diversity usually is not on most people's radar. So mold, heavy metals, non-metal chemicals, all this kind of thing is wrapped up in here. And this was a big one for me. So I had crazy high levels of toxic mold. I had no idea that mold was an issue. I have terrible detox epigenetic genes kind of going on, and it wasn't going well. And I have found, I'll tell you this, I run a mold panel on every client I have, and I've only had one client not come back with high levels of mold.
What panel do you like? What panel do you like to run on mold?
Yeah, I usually use Great Plains, Mycotox, or Vibrant. Both
Yeah.
of them are excellent.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't recognize that about just under half the households in North America are filled with mold. And mold is really nasty from a health system. And then on top of that, a lot of people are using deodorants with aluminum inside them, putting that right into the lymphatic system. The cleaning products that people are cleaning their houses with are usually, it's like just go into one of a dollar store type places and walk down that cleaning aisle thing, and it's enough to like. Then you have estrogenic plastics, particularly been using them in microwaves and things like that, or drinking bottles. These are another phytoestrogens, which are really suboptimal and can activate, like you said, if you're taking in an array of these chemicals that could be triggering. There's the genotype, which is your genetics, and the phenotype is the expression of that. So you can turn things on or turn things off. So your genetics aren't a death sentence. They're recognizing if you do this, this will happen. If you do that, that could happen. So this is, I think, an exciting field that I'm really fascinated about. Because of how do you get around your suboptimal genetics and leverage your really good genes. And I think that's where the future of health is going. So great stuff on the toxins. Great stuff on the toxins. And detoxification pathways. I have suboptimal detoxification pathways as well. And it's an area that I address through technology. So I fast once a week. I do a HOCAT machine. Anybody's known one of those? It's like you in a capsule, steam capsule with ozone and PEMF, and you're putting oxygen in on your body, and you got like all these lights and therapeutic lights and frequency. This is really cool. And sauna is another one that I'll use. Skin brushing is another thing that I'll use to kind of open up clogged pathways. A lot of exercise, deep breathing practices, anything that will help me detoxify is really important. What are some of the things that you identify on this? Like, what are the agents that are causing these toxins, and how do you get them out of the system typically?
And now for a Bioptimizers fixed digestion tip: supercharge your protein shake. Everyone knows protein shakes are a great way to sneak in extra protein, build more muscle, even replace meals and burn more fat. The problem is the highest quality protein typically absorbs at around 40%. One way to fix this and dramatically increase how quickly and effective your protein shake digests is to add 2 to 3 capsules of masszymes into your shake. One research study showed that pre-digested protein during a meal increased muscle growth significantly. To take advantage of this, just blend the open capsules into your shake, and within 15 minutes or less, the enzymes will have begun to break down the protein into amino acids. This can make your shakes at least 2 to 3 times more potent. Some people do this and sip on their shake while lifting to provide their muscles with a steady stream of amino acids during their workout. To save 10% on masszymes, use the code SHAKE10, that's SHAKE10, at masszymes.com. That's SHAKE10 at masszymes.com.
Yeah.
So it's a big one. It's a big one.
It is a big question. So there's a huge variety. And this is where it's interesting, because people come in and their label, like, I have breast cancer, stage 4, HER2 positive, like all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, let's do the test, because, it's going to look different for each person, not necessarily related to where the cancer is and the staging and everything, which toxins are there. And, whether it's their amalgams and such with the mercury, or, you listed a ton of amazingly awful toxins and such. But a lot of times we have to then dig into, where are these toxins coming from? And the answers are crazy. This is like, I'm a detective more than a healthcare practitioner, because it's finding where it's coming in and stopping the inflow. That's more than half the battle. And then the detox, which you mentioned, some of my very favorite ways to get the toxins out. And each toxin's a little different, but we are getting flooded with more and more and more toxins in our air and soil and water that we don't even know we have going on. I look at clients and they've got these weird gas related toxins, and it turns out they're under a flight path. and they're getting dumped on by the airlines. Like, people are not thinking about these things. And it's really important that if you do the test, you can then start to work backwards and figure out, where is it coming from, test your water, all this kind of stuff. But personally, I find that the saunas, the infrared saunas you mentioned, are one of the best ways for most of these toxins, especially the mold. I'm also a huge fan of one thing you didn't mention, which is the coffee enemas.
Oh yeah,
And,
those
okay, so you're familiar.
oh yeah, absolutely. Those are great.
And they're cheap, they're easy. You can do them at home. If you can get over the weird factor, my clients all come back and they tell me they love them. And I think it's
addictive. It's very addictive.
They are. They get you. So cancer clients tend to be stuck sympathetically in that kind of fight or flight, go, 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 go. And this will actually stimulate your vagus nerve and get you in the parasympathetic. And like that. And I personally love that. Just, okay, reset. There we go. It's a really nice calming way to then, oh yeah, I'm also getting detoxed and stuff as well.
There's number 10 on the list. We've got 9.
There is. The last one is probably, I would say, the one that I have the most passion about, save the best for last in a weird way. So that's the mental and emotional component. And this is so important and near and dear to my heart because most people ignore it. Most practitioners in any realm are ignoring this. And what we have found is that clinically, most cancer clients within a year of their diagnosis, so prior to their diagnosis, have had some kind of serious trauma that has hurt their heart, whether it's a loss of a job, a loved one, something has really gone sideways, and they may know what it is and they may not, but energetically, like, the emotional trauma manifests itself and resides in our tissues, in our bodies, our physical bodies. And we really need to address that and get that release so that it doesn't keep driving illness.
Yeah, that's really important. So this is a very thorough list, and I think it's a really exciting list because you've obviously put a lot of work into identifying these things. So now that the listener is aware of, let's say this 10-point checklist, let's start working on all you get a diagnosis on your side, whether you're going down the conventional, whether the holistic method, identifying and addressing these things is going to give you the best sense or chance of full recovery. What do you do to go about addressing these things? What are some suggestions that you found that have been successful for people? Do you have like a intake chart and they kind of go through a lifestyle program? What is it that happens?
That's fantastic. Well, first of all, thank you for giving me credit for all this, but I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, and Dr. Nasha Winters, who wrote The Metabolic Approach to Cancer, these are her 10 areas, and I was trained by her. So I've got to give her credit first off. So yeah, the program that I have is a year-long program, and we start with all the tests, the functional tests. So all of these areas that I mentioned, with the exception of like the mental, emotional one, we have concrete functional tests, and a lot of it, multiple ways of looking at what is going wrong. And I have an assessment that puts them into these categories so people can really see clearly, oh, these are my areas, root cause drivers. And that's going to help drive the protocols. It's going to also give people an idea, a focus of what they need to watch ongoing. So, for example, for me, my hormones were terribly whacked. I was super estrogen dominant at the time of my cancer. I know that's an area. I used something, DIM, and some Vitex or Chase Treeberry to bring my hormones back in balance. Actually, it only took a few months, which was beautiful. The herbs are so powerful. But then, let's see, about 6 months ago, I started noticing some hormonally symptoms, some breast tenderness and such. And I'm like, maybe this is perimenopause. I'm around that age group. Or maybe this is something starting to shift again in a negative way hormonally. So I did a hormone test. My hormones look beautiful. Okay, I have peace of mind. This was not the issue. And I can look into other things that might be causing that. So it's a really nice way of being able to stay ahead of the curve in the remission state of not waiting till there's a lump that's big enough to be detectable on a scan I
Mhm.
can see when things are off in my body way before then. And as long as I stay committed to making sure that I'm working on these and looking at them ongoing, I've got this covered.
That's really good. Typically with these groups of tests, I guess you would start with your initial barrage of tests, and then you're going to go and implement your strategies around these 10 areas.
Yes.
And then how long is on average, there's going to be a variance there, obviously, does it take for a person to be able to get their head around actually doing the things that they need to do and on a lifestyle process, like, like 30 days, 90 days, a year? What does it take?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So obviously my program is a year. A year is a good amount of time to really get all this stuff taken care of. But there's a wide variance of how people do this. And a lot of times with cancer, especially, people tend to do the ostrich move, where they stick their head in the sand and they're like, I'm not going to deal with this.
Yeah.
A lot of times, I think what you were alluding to is that people get very overwhelmed. Like, we're
Yeah.
taking somebody that had some serious lifestyle diet issues and we're trying to turn the Titanic around. And that means big changes. So the going keto and trying to figure out the math and how does the macros work? And, oh, these are weird foods, I don't know how to cook them. And it's a very steep learning curve. I have lots of tools for my clients, but then you layer in protocols for detox and all the stuff that you can do. And it's a big deal. So usually, it takes a month to get the test back, plus or minus, depending on how quick people take their test. In that time, I start with diet. Let's work on one thing at a time. As we get the test back, then we start layering protocols in, prioritizing what needs to be dealt with first and how fast the client is able to absorb things, because I don't want people to be overwhelmed. And I'm going to just start right here by saying one of the most important things that I work on up front is if they have anything like depression, because that mental emotional component, if they don't work on that right up front, if they're depressed and upset about the fact that they might die, which is kind of a thing, it's important to validate that. They're not going to be able to start doing all this crazy or elaborate cooking and supplement taking if they're depressed. And people aren't talking about that, but that really needs to be addressed right up front so that they are going to be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always had a statement that I would tell all my clients: where the mind goes, the body will follow. And if your mind's not in the right place, your chances of recovery is very low. And
I love that. Yes.
So you want to get your mind in the right place. You want to be able to reinforce that mindset and attitude, and creating an environment of success. It's like an athletic team has to have an environment of success and an attitude. So you have to treat it like a professional sports athlete would, mm-hmm. or a professional sports team, and get the right people on your team that are going to, encourage that. And also, oftentimes you have to cut some things out of your life, people, places, and things that are super unsupportive or make recovery almost impossible under those conditions.
Oh, I 100% agree. And this was probably one of the most important things that I did in my cancer journey. Someone else had mentioned this to me and I just ran with it. But when I was first, I found the lump and discovered it was cancer, I sent out an email to literally everybody I knew, my whole friend, family, network, everything, letting them know what was going on, telling them I would love their prayers and that I'm going to be addressing it natural. And that I had a plan, we'd done some testing, et cetera, so that they knew that I was not just meandering aimlessly and not doing something, that I had a plan. And then at the end, I put something to the effect of, if you don't agree with what I'm doing, people are going to be like very opinionated about, I should have done standard of care, et cetera. Please keep this to yourself. I don't want to hear about it. I've made my choice. Yeah. And I do not want any of that negativity undermining my health journey. Best decision ever. Now, I do have some family members that still kind of don't talk to me, that thought I was going to die. And that's okay, because that was really important to have that safe, protective bubble of support around me during this. Because like you said earlier, that placebo effect, is a real thing. And I needed to think positive and be focused on healing.
When a person is engaging this in making lifestyle change, what are some of the physiological things that come along with battling cancer? Is there, fatigue or mood swings or low mood? Like, what are some of the things that people can, I hate the word to use expect, but may experience during that recovery period, or that, the fight, or whatever you want to call it?
That's a super interesting question, Wade. So most people hear about, the effects of the chemo radiation surgery, and that's what they think of as cancer. And when you're doing it alternatively, it's very different, shockingly different, to where, my clients aren't losing their hair and things like that. It's really more connected with what are their drivers, and they're going to have the symptoms that are connected with those specific issues. And it looks completely different to everybody. Now, the common issues that I see as kind of a thread throughout have to do with things like the transition to a ketogenic diet. So, all my clients are transitioning. And a lot of times, if you jump to a really high fat diet fast and you're not digesting fat, you're going to be nauseous, because you're not digesting fat. So
that's where shameless promotion. That's where Capex comes in, our digestive enzyme that has 4 different types of lipase and proteolytic enzymes as well. Because again, some people don't have the lipolytic pathways to break down fats very well. I'm one of those people. That's why we developed Capex, actually. So interesting enough.
It's a beautiful product, and it's so that, because if clients, I see a lot of people that, have no gallbladder. They're not going to be digesting their fats. They have to ongoing for the rest of their life have something to help them digest their fats. And if they don't, because what do the doctors say? They say, just don't eat a lot of fat. Well, that kind of solves the problem of I didn't get nauseous at this meal, but you have to have fats, and you need the cholesterol to build hormones and neurotransmitters and all these different things that you need the fats. Every cell membrane is made out of fats. You need them. And so there's a lot of really interesting long-term consequences if people don't get their fats long-term. So that's one thing, is the fat digestion. The other thing is that the transition, a lot of times, especially if people do it robust, fast, their electrolytes go funky, because when they lower their insulin, because they're not eating carbs, the body is one of the other side things insulin does is it signals retention of sodium, the salt.
Yeah.
So if you lower it, then you're dumping your salt. And so, making sure you put salt in your water and take some electrolytes easily mitigates a lot of that keto flu stuff that you hear about. Now, the interesting thing, another side effect that people talk about is if they're in the later cancering stages, which I get quite a few stage 4, standard of care has discarded them, and we're working on things. One of the best reasons to do keto is to prevent cachexia. So that's the emaciated, they're wasting away to nothing. And that's usually what cancer clients actually die from. It's not cancer. They're starving. And it's really sad to watch, but keto, bizarrely enough, because usually nowadays you hear keto is good for weight loss, it will actually prevent the cachexia from setting in, which is super powerful.
What's your opinion on I know there's a lot of advocates out there in the alternative world that are using cannabis related products around either CBD or the more hallucinogenic, or not hallucinogenic, but pharmacological cannabis products that we're familiar with as a way to increase appetite or reduce pain inside the body if they're in a pain situation. What's your opinion on those things? Because I know that it varies from state to state, accessibility, and there's a lot of misnomers out there and everything. And so what do you, any ideas around that?
I have lots of ideas. So I'm actually in Idaho, where it's illegal and such. So it's very appropriate that you mentioned that. So there's a lot of different reasons you might want to use some of these different herbs. So honestly, I don't really use it much for appetites. because my clients typically, although I'm not against this, I get more clients that tend to not want to do the chemo and radiation, which is
Right. That's the one that really crushes appetites, right? Just the toxicity of that for treatment. Yeah.
And if you're not doing that, usually they have a fine appetite. That's not usually the issue. In terms of pain, I am all about the cannabis for the pain. High dose fish oils is also really amazing for pain. There's some different herbal things. And again, getting to the root cause of why they have pain. And a lot of times you can address that. But depending on where they are, it just may be the actual tumor causing pain. Now, there's also another, I'm going to kind of go off on a tangent, but a lot of the other plant medicines, different mushrooms and things like that can have kind of some therapeutic effects to open the heart up and make it easier for people to deal with some of these traumas. And that's a whole nother realm of different medicinal therapeutic herbs for other reasons as well, that I think is fabulous. Whatever you need to get to that trauma.
Gabor Mate has a number of research-based information on the use of ethnobotanicals. So ethnobotanicals are a range of plant medicines that are used often in traditional indigenous populations and have been used for centuries. People hear about it. They can be very insightful into underlying the subconscious or traumatic, particularly when traumatic experiences. I do advocate, if you go down that route, to have proper practitioners and experienced shamanic practitioners in order to do it, not just like, your local guy that calls himself a shaman, etc. And check out Mate's work, because it was very transformative for his own journey as well as many others. And I have hundreds and hundreds of friends and colleagues who have used some of these plant medicines as transformative on the internal side of the healing, outside of chemistry or activity or physiology. Again, getting down to the core aspect of trauma. And you can also check out Louise Hay's "You Can Heal Your Life" is a really great book where it starts to connect various types of illness to subconscious programming. And when just understanding that relationship between mind and body is very helpful, and then actually having an integrated experience can be very transformative for a lot of individuals. And it's starting to gain traction around the world. And a lot of research is going into this, and the positive effects are legitimate.
Yes, very much. Yeah, I think I would also add on to that. You definitely want to have the right practitioners there, because that energy needs to be in a positive way and supportive, but it's also really important to have either a person or people to integrate what has happened with. And that isn't always done. If it's a, social thing, that's not a part of it. And that's not what I'm talking about. It needs to be where you're actually doing it for a therapeutic reason, similar to using like ketamines and such, which can be done, legally, and you want to have that integration time.
Yes. What are some other things that are happening on this journey to recovery that you've noticed, or any points that I haven't covered so far?
Oh, so many things. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of treatment options and modalities to use when you're talking about alternative, not even getting into the standard of care top 3, but there's such an interesting thing that happens in the mind of somebody with cancer if they're looking at alternative treatment, where it's kind of like overwhelming, because there's so many things that are so effective that, are claiming all these amazing results, but yet it doesn't work for everyone.
Right.
And where you can go crazy and spend a small fortune and have a full-time job doing all the stuff. And then there's still this thought in the back of the head, did I do enough?
Of course.
Is this everything?
Am I doing the right thing?
Yes.
Doing my right dosage? Am I taking the right things? Is this person legit? And you start creating a whole schmozzle around your recovery journey. So I would suggest, I'm going to intuit, this is where you need a coach, a quarterback to help you sift through all of these things and keep you reduce kind of information overload or confusion through overwhelming of variance.
Yeah. And this is where, doing the testing to know what your issues are can help you zoom in and save time and prioritize and save money. Because I've had clients that are spending a fortune on, IV vitamin C every other day. And it shows up on their test that that's not something that's going to be, it's not bad for them, but it's not going to be what's really going to move the dial. It's not their issue. And, there's also the thought that a lot of these practitioners are not doing some of the testing that they need to do, like in that case of IV vitamin C, they should be looking at the G6PD to make sure that this is an appropriate, that, looking, are they catabolic or anabolic, to make sure that it is an appropriate therapy. And sometimes the IV vitamin C, if they're not in the right state at that time, can actually worsen the situation. And people aren't talking about that. And we have tests to see. Brilliant tests. So I just say test, don't guess. We want to make sure that it's the appropriate thing at the appropriate time.
Got it. So that's a lot of information, but
Right.
Understand that you have an ebook that helps people get their handle around what their options are. I think you have a group program as well, maybe some other services. Can you talk about your ebook? Who's it for? What's it about? And maybe your group program and other things that you may have to offer.
Absolutely. Thanks. So the ebook goes into a lot more depth as to these 10 areas that root cause drivers. And specifically, I go into like, which tests would you want to look at so that people can really start to understand what the whole process looks like in terms of determining what are your root cause drivers. And, it's called the Roadmap to Prevent Cancer Recurrence. It's the same process to prevention as well as during the cancering journey, because I look at the tumor. The tumor is not the enemy. The tumor is a symptom of what's going on. And it's just a spectrum of how far are you on this spectrum. Either which way, we want to get you as far away from the end as possible. And that's where we get really specific information with this testing and process. The group program. So back when I was cancering, this is what I would have loved.
It's a great thing. Back when I was cancering. That's a very interesting statement. I like that. It's cute.
So I worked one-on-one with clients in this program with this framework for many years. And I really want my people to have a community, because one of the big things is that, it feels very isolating to be doing this. Who do you know that's doing this, right? Who do you go to? How can you commiserate and discuss and celebrate wins and stuff with? So I'm creating a group program that is launching the end of January, and it's going to have a whole course to empower you to understand the labs. The labs are included, so you have access to these labs and you get them as part of the program. And you have a Q&A access to me and the other practitioners, as well as a community of people that are going through the same process.
That sounds really cool.
I'm excited about it.
Where do they find the book, find you in the group program?
Yeah. So the information about the group program is at cancerfreedom.com. So that's the name of my program, cancerfreedom.com. And if you add on to that /opt-in, I'll drop you the link. But let's see. I think that's all it is. And you can get the free ebook and such on there.
And the ebook's name is?
The Roadmap to Prevent Cancer Recurrence.
The Roadmap to Preventing Cancer Reoccurrence. You have group programs available, and the website is?
Cancerfreedom.com. And the ebook is at cancerfreedom.com /roadmap-opt-in.
We'll put that in the show notes in case you didn't get it. But will they be able to go to the website and be able to navigate around and find that ebook?
I think that's pretty easy to find there. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll encourage people to go to that. And then, of course, especially for those in isolation, you definitely want to get on the group program. I found that going through the points when my sister was dying of cancer, I can remember the isolation factor that it was around her and how other people would change their behavior or not quite act the same way. And it's very challenging as a cancer person, as well as how maybe you're feeling. And having a group of people that get it, that understand it, and that are going through the same thing helps alleviate that sense of loneliness and isolation. So I think that's a very good service that you're providing for people, and I encourage them to check that out, as well as the ebook. Any final words, Katrina, before we sign off?
Yeah, I am so grateful that you had me on. It's just such a passion of mine to really help people get that clarity to know, like, why did this happen? And have tools so that it doesn't happen again. And that's what we're all about, so that people can not feel alone and have the control to live the life that they want to live.
Well, as we say back where I'm from, you're doing the Lord's work, and that's a great service to reach out and help people in one of the most stressful times that they could have in their life. And turning that stress, all disease is an opportunity or an invitation from divinity to find out aspects of yourself that you may not have known existed. So if you or someone you love that has a diagnosis of cancer, or you want to prevent it from happening or prevent it from reoccurring if you're overcoming, I would recommend that you check out Katrina's sites, which are located in the show notes. Thank you for joining us, Katrina, and thank you for listening to us. For wherever you are in the world, I'm Wade T. Lightheart from Bioptimizers. This is the Awesome Health Podcast. If you like it, share it, subscribe to the channel, and we enjoy your feedback and comments. We'll see you on the next episode.
And now for a Bioptimizers fixed digestion tip: how to get away with eating sugar. Hey, look, sugar is normally one of the worst things for you. But let's be honest. I mean, we all cheat from time to time. And here's a little trick that will ensure your body benefits from the sugar. Now, before you eat or drink anything sweet, take 5 to 8 capsules of P3OM. The patented strain in the formula devours sugar so fast it literally doubles in the body every 20 minutes in the presence of sugar. That doesn't mean that you can or you should eat a bunch of sugar or sit around all day doing that. But on the days that you do cheat, or you go after one of those maybe meals that you wouldn't normally do, this ensures that you get something in your gut that eats the sugar. And it's not going to feed the bad guys or spike your blood glucose nearly as much. So to learn more about P3OM and its sugar-devouring and protein-digesting properties and how it can transform your gut and metabolism, go to www.bioptimizers.com.
Thank you for listening to the Bioptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. You can find more information at bioptimizers.com.